Hello, this is part 2 talking about object-oriented programming, and we'll be focusing on constructors and destructors, so stay tuned. So in this video I'll talk about classes, constructors and destructors. So what are the constructors and destructors and how to use them and what are the benefits of using them. So let's start. Here we will keep working on the same project that we did last time. Here we have a class named student and we have some private members and public members, as well as we have the main method that we created two objects, student1 and student2 of type student, and we initialize, we set some values and we printed some results. So you can go back and watch that video. We will keep working on that. We'll go back to the class and we will add something known as a constructor. Usually the constructor is written in the public section and here can be accessed from everywhere. So the constructor is mainly used to create and initialize the object. So here, in order to add a constructor to your class, you need to write the constructor, which is similar to a function but has exactly the same name as the class name. So what is the class name here? It's student. So that's why the constructor will be like this, student, and that's it. So here is the constructor. So again, this will be written implicitly if you didn't write it by yourself. And the main thing, as we mentioned, is to initialize the variables. So here we can give an initial value for all of our data members. We can set the ID to 0, and we can set the name, we can set the age. By default the age at the college is 20, let's say, and we can set that the scores 1 equals score 2, score 3, and equals to 0 if you want, and here the average as well equals to 0 to just initialize them. So this is a constructor. It's similar to a function. It's member in the class, and this is called as a default constructor because it has nothing here, no arguments here inside the parentheses. So this is the default one, and we just did the initialization. So to see when this will be invoked, I will just print a message here to show us when this will be invoked. Default constructor. Okay, so this is the thing. And here let me run the program. I did not change anything in the main. We have two objects, and let's run it here and let's see the results. Look at this. We have two messages have been printed. This is the default, this is the default, and this is a proof that there is a constructor for each object. So we have two objects here, as you can see. So student1 invoked the constructor and student2 invoked the second constructor. So this can tell you that the constructor is triggered and invoked right away when you create a new object. If you have a third one, let's say std3, and run the code again, you'll see 3 times that the message has been printed. You see that? So for each object there is a constructor, and it will be invoked right away when you create the object. Now, so to write a constructor, we have, as we mentioned, we have to write exactly the same name. And by the way, the constructor returns nothing. So do not write anything in front of the constructor. Do not write void or integer. It's nothing. There is nothing. Just the name and then the parentheses and the values or the messages that you want. Now, there is something known as overloading the constructor. So we can have more than one constructor in the class, but only one constructor will be triggered at the same time. Only one, nothing more. So here, let me show you. I have another constructor, but this time this constructor will accept some values, string n and integer id, integer age, and so on. So let's do this thing. So here we have another constructor that is accepting 3 arguments. So here I will say that the name equals n, that the id equals id 1 to id 1, and here the last one is the age equals to age 1. Write a message. This is the overloaded constructor. Again, to call the constructor, we need the name of the student, and then the ID, and then the age, let's say 23. So this is matching the exact same parameters or arguments that we have in our constructor. 3 arguments, string, integer, integer, and these are the things. So let's run the code again and we'll see. Look at this. The first class, the first object, std1, calls the default constructor. The second one called the default constructor as well. The third one called the overloaded constructor. You see that one? So one of them will be invoked for each constructor. This is calling the default, and this is the conversion constructor, the overloaded constructor. You see that? So now I can here print the values, the current values of std3 dot get name, let's say, and let's see the name here. So run, and you can see, sorry, we missed this one. Run, and here is the name of the third object, Matt, that we get it from constructor as we passed it. Let's jump into the third one. We can do a third constructor that is accepting more arguments. So each constructor must be different than the previous one through using different data types or different number of arguments. So here I can say float score 1, float score 2, and float score 3. So you see that there are different arguments here, different than the other. So that's why the compiler can distinguish between one constructor and the other constructor. So you can fill that later on by assigning them to the right places. Now we are done with the constructors, and these are overloaded versions. Here in this example we have 3 constructors, but only one will be invoked at a time. Good. Now let's jump into another concept, which is the destructor. This destructor is used to delete that object from the memory and to release the space to be used later on. So the main thing, the destructor will be called automatically as well, and the name of the constructor will be the same, and this is the student, but we have a special here, a special character, which is the tilde here in front of the name of the destructor to distinguish between the constructor and destructor. So this is the destructor. So this is a destructor, and we have only just one destructor. We cannot overload the destructor. We have one destructor, and to destroy that object to release the memory space. So here all what we can do, or one of the things we can do, is to print a message to show us when this will be invoked. This is a destructor. You see that? So here I didn't change anything in the main, and I will run it again. Look at this: destructor, destructor, destructor. 3 messages, because we have 3 objects. So when we finish, or when the scope of those objects terminated, then these destructors will be invoked. So at the right place. See that? So it depends on the scope of the destructor. So here we have again constructor and destructor. Here we have to fill all the information, but I will just comment these for later on. And here we have the destructor to destroy the object, and we can see that those will be invoked right away when we reach the end of the scope, when we finish using, or there is no need to keep them into the memory. So this is the second part, and I hope you learned something new. Subscribe and share, and goodbye. Thank you.